So with everything in place and a little bit of rework done, this is what we end up with for our resource processing area. I've very carefully combed out the top layer. I have pulled out all of the outputs and routed them based on where they're going, and then stubbed them in to some sinks with some smart splitters so that we can start using these tail ends for something. And what happens is that any overflow will go to the sink. So I can leave these sinks in place right up until I start moving uranium around. And it will successfully sink everything and keep our main factory exercising. The idea is that this is our resource prep area. And over in the northeastern quadrant, and this is actually fairly large, will be fuel prep. And fuel prep breaks down very neatly into 5 strips. So I'll put it in 5 columns. And over in this area, we're going to be putting somewhere in here where it's convenient. There's a fairly small chunk of work to prepare some acids. And then we have reprocessing of the fuel, which is in 6 strips. Well, it's in 3 strips, or 6 if you allow pairs of strips to share a cyclotron. Or maybe I'll put in twice as many cyclotrons. Maybe I'll do it in 6 strips. But the reason why that works out, aside from the being dividing nicely into 5 or 6 or 3 or 10, I can set my reactors up like this, so I can have the waste coming out here east to west. Thank you, autosave. Your timing is impeccable. And the fuel rods are going to come in from the left, that's north, from the 5 strips of the fuel rod production. Just like that. So I spent a little bit of time working out exactly how big the reactors were and whether I wanted their long way to go north-south or east-west. And this looked like it was about the right layout. Basically, this is 5 foundations wide. My decks are 4x4. This is 5 wide by 6 long. So it doesn't divide really evenly. I could have rotated them, and instead of being in a 25 by 36, we would have been in a 30 by 30, which it would have been a little bit wider. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be lining this up, that may be a problem if I make it much wider. But I think since this is 5 rather than 4, I'm going to end up doing my strips and then jogging the belts around anyway. But got these laid out. I'm not going to pick up 29 out of the 30 and rotate them all 90 degrees and put down new markers for where I want them. I think the next bit of work I'm going to do is going to be probably a few hours of looking at these and saying, well, how am I going to get the water in? Now, I do know that it's fairly easy to take all of the water I'm prepping for nuclear and stack it all up like this. And yeah, it's a little finicky to just run this around and get them right, but it's not that hard. So what I will do is I'm going to clean this off, and I will, when I figure out how I'm going to run the water, I'll put it here. Now, there's several alternatives. I can run my water east to west, which means out on the eastern side, I will get stacks of 6 high water, which will then turn and go down. The other way is to run it north-south, and I'll get stacks of 5 high water, which will then have to be turned around. And one thing is, as I move this vertically and horizontally, sometimes you get effects where you can very easily go from this 5 by 6 to a 6 by 5 going the other way. So what I'm going to do is work through the best way to run the water for the reactors, independent of how it's going to grid out there. And once I get it, then I will worry about how I'm going to hook it up to the original distribution, which is from here. Basically, it's these are 3 deep, so we want 7, 8, 9, 10. So from this pipe to the right, all of these get hooked up to reactors somehow. I'd like to hook that up early and verify that I have water flow to all of my reactors. I'm not going to be able to verify that I have full pressure. I just need to keep it lower than this plane. So this is my head lift. My head lift may be a little higher than this, I don't know, but I know that I can go as high as the top of this surface for water. So I've got some space to work with. So I will do that, and then I need to plan out over here for my waste area, exactly how big is this? I need to do a cyclotron and a few other things. So let's throw that up on the screen if I can. Okay, that's a bit bigger than I expected, but we can look at it. Up in this upper left-hand area here, this shows what I will need to do to make my nuclear fuel. And I want 5 strips of this. Each strip has 2 manufacturers doing one thing and 2 doing other. That's a blueprint I already have. So it's really only 2 4x4 areas. So nuclear fuel production is fairly tight. The hard part is how many ingredients those guys have. So uranium fuel unit is going to be turning out the fuel rods from 4 things. And the other one is turning out the fuel rods from 4 things. So I've got 7 inputs. So I have 7 belt inputs. 4 go into the first manufacturer, its output, and the other 3 go into the second manufacturer, and the output of that goes downstream. That's not too bad. Reactors themselves we just looked at. Its output is going to go into nuclear waste. Let me move the window around on OBS a little bit. So the nuclear waste, this is 1/3, so 2 strips of reactors. We need a particle accelerator. We're going to need a pair of blenders and a pair of manufacturers. I haven't put any blenders into any blueprints, but I believe that the blenders are a little smaller than the manufacturers. And the assemblers. It would be really cool if I could fit 3 assemblers and 2 blenders into a blueprint, but it's not necessary. So these are actually fairly small as well. I mean, even if I have a blueprint for this and a blueprint for this and a blueprint for this, the particle accelerator may not even fit in a blueprint on its own. So we're still looking at 3 4x4 deck areas and whatever size the particle accelerator is in the middle. So that's not huge. So I am thinking that the amount of space I blocked out for this may be a little overkill. Maybe. I could always knock everything down to overclocking to 100% instead of 240 and get a lot more space eating up. But at this point, I want to follow through with the plan as planned and just get it working. And it's going to take, I'm estimating a number of hours of just tinkering and getting things hooked up, because can't use blueprints for things that don't fit in the blueprint machine. So anyway, it'll be a while before the next recording. I will see you then.